Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. My name is James Bush. Thank you for tuning in to Ask a Counselor, brought to you by Stars. This is a live stream that seeks to answer questions that you may have about addiction, most notably the opioid crisis and things along those lines. And we may include a couple of other substances in there just to talk about. Don't tell nobody. So, to my right, well, to your left, possibly, I have DeWayne Holman. He is from Nashville Prevention Partnerships. I want him to give you a brief introduction about the great work that he does.
Thank you, James, for inviting me here. I'm DeWayne Holman, the Executive Director of Nashville Prevention Partnership. I've been in the field of substance abuse for 26 years now, so very long time. But Nashville Prevention Partnership, we've been around since about 1991 or so. And what we do here in Nashville is we help people understand a little bit about how drugs and how the addiction and things like that affects our community here in Nashville. To that point, we have recently, in the past couple of years, started a program that's funded by the federal government and through the state Department of Mental Health Substance Abuse Services to train people how to use Narcan, how the various components of the disease of opioid addiction, and how we got to where we are today. I learned today, for example, since 1999, we've had over 400,000 deaths in our country. So think about that, 400,000 deaths in our country since 1999. Think about where you were in 1999, all the way to this point. That is about the equivalent of the total population of Cleveland, Ohio.
Wow.
It's about two Knoxvilles, if you want to think about that. So that many people have died since 1999.
Wow.
So we're trying to help reduce those rates here in Nashville.
So I mean, I guess you can say that in your 26 years of you working and doing this, you've seen a lot of stuff happen and shifts and change and trends when it comes to substance abuse.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I tell people when I first got involved in substance abuse prevention, opioids were not the thing that it is now.
Okay.
In the early 1990s, we were in the middle of a crack epidemic. So we had a situation in this country where we had a national emergency then, a public health emergency then.
Mm-hmm.
So I've lived through that epidemic, and now we're experiencing a different epidemic, and we are equipped with some completely different tools, completely different understanding about the addiction and the brain and the process and things like that. So that's where we've come. We've come a long way from there. We certainly have a long way to go, and things like that. What we're finding is a lot of times these issues that we deal with aren't just individual issues. They're really systemic issues that we're dealing with. So it's not just the individual who's using the drugs. There's all sorts of other things that go into that as well.
It's funny because something that I like to talk about when we're talking about substance abuse and things along those lines is that the substance, or just addiction period, is that the substance is just a symptom of other things that are going on in that person's life.
Yeah, that's right.
So we can't just say, well, this person is just using Opanas, or he's using opioids, or he's using hydros, or anything like that.
Yeah.
There's other things that are going on in that individual's life that's influencing and affecting them to continue to use these substances, and it's possible maybe an escape, help, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So now let's get into it. Question. And how this works is that one, you can, if you're tuned in on YouTube, you can ask a question through our live chat, and we can see it and we can answer it from there. Or you can go to whatever social media platform that you use. I guess there's only 4 or 5 big ones, and you can hashtag have the conversation. Or you can hashtag ask a counselor. Ask your question, and our people will definitely find it and pick it up. So let's get into it. One of the first questions we usually have, or is commonly asked of us, is that, what can I do to help my loved one? DeWayne.
Yes.
What can someone that has a loved one suffering from substance abuse, opioids, do to help their loved one during that situation? What are some of the first steps you would say?
Well, one of the major steps that you want to do is you want to try to find treatment alternatives for them. We know that treatment is effective. However, we also know that relapse is also a part of that process. So you can go to TADIS, you can go to Have the Conversation, actually, and you can see some of the resources there, havethisconversation.org. But that's one of the first things you want to do is try to find some alternatives to get your loved one in. The other thing that you want to do, because we're talking about opioid specific, you probably want to get your hands on some naloxone. And what naloxone does is it reverses the event of a person who has an overdose. As we understand it now, these chemicals work in your brain. And so there are certain receptors in your brain that actually tells your brain, hey, I've got opioids. I have opioids in my system. I want more opioids in my system.
I want more. Right.
And so in order to more or less, and I'm not being scientific here, but I'm just trying to give you an example, in order to kind of shut that off, the Narcan actually reverses that. What it does is it binds more tightly on that brain receptor than the opioid for a brief amount of time. Now, if that is to occur, then of course you give the Narcan, but you also want to call 911 to make sure that they get medical attention as well. It's very important to make sure that they get medical attention too, because the Narcan only lasts, or naloxone only lasts for a little while before you're back in a situation where they will experience those overdoses. So those are the two things I would say immediately that I would have that person to do.
So I want to add to that as well, that I come from the idea is that your best offense is a stronger defense. And so for the person who has a loved one thing that I recommend is to educate, inform yourself about opioids, about addiction. What does that actually look like? What does that entail to you? There are many different resources, NIDA, drugabuse.gov. There are many different websites that discuss this very topic. And so it's just a quick search. Along with that, there are support groups in your communities. Some of them are via online. Some of them are over the phone. You can use these services to kind of help you with the understanding about what you're actually going to expect. Some tools, some techniques on how to address your loved one, what to do, what to say, what not to do, what could possibly be overriding your own boundaries. And sometimes we don't even know it. Sometimes we have come into places with different loved ones that we're actually helping them to continue doing what they're doing as opposed to helping them. So having those people around you can be very effective. And it's just all about informing yourself. But you can do it though, because many people have done it before you.
And I love what you said. Self-care is important. I mean, you can divert a lot of resources to that individual. But what are you doing for yourself to make sure that you are healthy, safe, and able to cope with the issues that come along with it? Because it is a heavy burden. It's a heavy burden in terms of just mentally, physically, emotionally, all of those things, because you're dealing with a loved one. Right. And you're dealing with someone that you care deeply about. And that person is the same person that you knew before they got addicted. It's just that their brain is constantly being rewired by the opioids.
And we don't need, for you to see the loved one, they begin to continue to use the opioid, and then all of a sudden you just start turning into drinking.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that is not the way you.
That is not the way we're saying. Right. We don't want you to do that. Okay. So let's go to our next question. It says, what are the most commonly abused prescription drugs? Wayne, what do you got? What are some of the things that you're seeing out in the community?
Well, in terms of prescriptions, we're talking about Oxycontin, oxycodone, hydrocodone. All of these fit into the opioid or opiate family. By the way, opioids, we consider that the naturally occurring part of opium, and then opiates are the ones that are manufactured. So those are three big ones. Of course, we still see Xanax is one of those that's abused heavily. Um, those are the ones that I am most aware of. You may have a few more that you can add to that as well.
Oh, you can't forget Roxy.
Well, that's true.
You can't forget
that's right.
Roxycodone, Tylenol. You can't forget that one as well.
Yeah.
These, again, as you mentioned, Xanax bars or anything like that, they're plentiful. They're out there. What I can say is that you'll find in any community, there are different patches, different pockets who they are more prone to go to maybe an oxycodone as opposed to a Xanax bar. Or if you go into middle America, they are more prone to go to any other type of drug. It's just what is plentiful in that area. So sometimes it's like a shipment, where you have a shipment of materials and goods that are dropped off in an area. And once those materials and goods are all used up, then something comes along to take its place. And so that's
right.
what we can look at it as. If you want to say, it's like, okay, well, in this area, maybe Xanax is one, maybe oxycodone is one, maybe hydrocodone is one. Right. Once that's gone, once it's finito, then they'll probably move to something else because something has to take its place. Remember, this is addiction. Right. So the addiction doesn't go away when someone is able to have no more. They find other substitutes.
And just remember, just a few short years ago, we weren't even talking about prescription drugs. We were talking about over-the-counter drugs.
Yes.
Remember that whole thing with lean and the purple drink and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
For those who are not familiar with that, that's just basically cough syrup. Now, some of those were prescription cough syrups as well, but we were talking about using those kind of things as well. So I mean, let's not forget about the over-the-counters as well that could potentially abuse.
And when he says cough syrup, so it breaks down into promethazine and codeine. And then so what some people like to do is they'll take the syrup and they will mix it with maybe gummy bears or a high energy drink or maybe a Mountain Dew or a Sprite or so. And the Jolly Ranchers or the gummy bears are there to give it flavor. And it's this thick like syrup that you see, and it's just the weirdest thing. And they continue to ingest it. It's highly addictive. It has been known to cause seizures. Matter of fact, in some of your popular celebrities who have ingested this over and over and over, Justin Bieber, they have been known to do so. Lil Wayne, So that is what our next question is. Let's move on to our next one. Which one do you want to pick, DeWayne?
Let's see. You want to talk about the signs of opioid addiction?
The signs of opioid addiction. What are some of the signs of opioid addiction? Okay, for instance, let me start off. I'll start off with this one. So one of the signs is if you are a 50, 60-year-old parent and your son or daughter comes home from college and you've had maybe a couple surgeries and you've had a prescription of opioids, maybe an oxycodone or a hydrocodone or anything like that, and you have it in your pill cabinet, and then all of a sudden you notice that your pills are gone, anything like that. That is one of the quickest signs. Remember, college, a lot of experimentation, they come back. Again, the addiction does not stop because of its geographical relocation. That doesn't happen. It's still within them. They still had to feed the beast. And so that's what I'm seeing from a lot of middle-aged parents or so, is that their children who come away from college, or they're coming home and then they are either taking their pills or they're taking money or they're selling things. And that is what we turn and we look at as an opioid addict.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, a couple of things here. One is some of these, the question is, what are some of the signs? Some of the signs are similar to any other addiction as well. So let's just keep that in mind in terms of other drug addiction. So it's not necessarily that it points out just to opioids. It could be some other things as well. But what you just said reminded me of a program that we have here in the state of Tennessee called Count It, Lock It, Drop It.
Right.
And what that program is doing, they are actually giving out little lock boxes for people to be able to lock away their most addictive addictive drugs, you can go to Count It, Lock It, Drop It to find more information about that. Nashville has just become a partner in that organization, and so we will start to pretty soon actually start giving away some of those
Nice.
drop boxes. So
Nice.
maybe the next time that we come on, I might have a few of those drop boxes, and we can give out to some of the people who are listening here. But those are very important things to understand. Moods. People have mood changes and things like that. If they acted a certain way just a week or two, a month ago, and then they're starting to act a little different, then that could be a sign. Now, again, that's not the only sign. I mean, in order to kind of just think about that, I know I have two teenage daughters, and so I'm constantly thinking about what's going on. I ask them every day, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And of course, asking a teenager how you doing, how you feeling is almost like asking, that chair over there sometimes because they don't open up.
Right.
But what it's all about is communicating and trying to understand where that person is and where they are.
Good. So now, Sarah Hunt Blackwell has asked a question. She says, many times opioid addiction starts after an injury. How can people use opioids effectively to manage pain but not develop an addiction?
Oh.
I'm gonna let you take that one right there.
I am. First of all, let me just say I'm not a doctor, so I can't really speak from that standpoint. However, I do know that just in looking at what the hospitals are doing and what some of the pain management people are doing, they are actively seeking alternatives to opioids all the time. A lot of times, if it's dental work or things like that, they're now some practices, and I know this because I just had some work. Some of them are recommending ibuprofen and Tylenol, and you just increase the dosage for that. But again, that's under the care of a dentist or a doctor. In some circumstances, opioids are still available. But now what they're doing is they're giving limited supply. So instead of that 30-day supply or 60-day supply or 90-day supply, they're giving you home with a 3-day supply or something like that. And then you have to, if you still need it, you re-up with your doctor or your pharmacist. But they are trying to put more controls in place after this epidemic that we find ourselves in.
I want to add to that is that as we begin to grow as a community, as in the medical field as well, with prescribing different medications, use only as directed. Don't, what the directions tell you to take 2, you go and take 5. That's not helpful. That is leading you to possibly an addiction or abuse it even more, that much quicker. When you ingest things into your body has a chemical reaction to it, believe it or not. And I'm not going to get into the science right now because I don't have enough time, and I definitely don't want to talk about that. But what I will say is that use as directed. If it tells you to take 1 a day, take 1 a day. Also, going along with that, if you have a cousin or an aunt that has an extra supply of medication, because at times we don't take everything that we have. Sometimes we start feeling better, and that pill lays dormant within our cabinet or our closet or our sock drawer or anything like that for long periods of time. That is not the option for you to use. It is not, because believe it or not, many individuals, they get hooked on these things by drugs that are passed from a close relative or family member or neighbor or who's just trying to be nice. They're just trying to be, hey, look, hey, honey, I'm gonna help you out, right? Here's what you can use, and like that. You take one of them, it'll fix you right up. Okay, so you take 1, 2, 3, 4, 10. Then all of a sudden, you're addicted and you're hooked on some other things, and you're searching for stuff that's out there. So use only as directed. Again, we're not medical professionals. Now, I can't say that other famous website or anything like that because I don't want to get us sued or anything like that. But what I will say is that a web search is not going to be the end all to all of your information.
That's right.
It's not. Consult your medical physicians along these matters.
And let me just say one other thing. It was a good point you brought up that in terms of passing medicines to other people, because if we're all honest with ourselves, we probably either thought about it or maybe done it ourselves. But we do have alternatives. When you have expired medicines and when you have medicines that you no longer need, please take those down to, if you're here in Nashville, go to the precincts. All of our police precincts have places where you can take those medications to.
Yes.
Many of the Walmarts, some of the CVSs do as well.
Yes.
So you want to make sure that you properly dispose of them as well. It's better for the environment. It's better for our community. We don't get them stolen, lost, and things like that. So those are the kind of recommendations that I would have.
You'd be amazed how many questions I get about people who said, well, the medication, it expired last month. Can I still use it? Mm-hmm. Or it's like, even they've gotten even more scientific about it, where they're saying the half-life. You know, looking at what's the half-life of this medication right here? Can it still be? And look, I don't want to make any small feat of anything, because a lot of us are in financial situations, especially paying for these expensive medications and everything like that. So I don't want to make light of any of that. Right. However, we must be safe. Right. I think we have time for one more question.
All right, one more.
All right. What do we want to go out there and say? Let's see. Would you like to do that one right there?
Well, won't they just stop? Is that which one is it?
Nah, it's the marijuana. But
oh, you can handle that if you want. If you want to, that's.
Go on, tackle it, DeWayne.
Okay, so James will answer. Is marijuana a better alternative than opioids?
Don't shoot me. Is marijuana a better alternative than opioids? Now, we do definitely know, again, I only got about 2 more minutes. There's a lot of science that goes along with this and what the effects of marijuana does and how it is able to help individuals or so. But I want to take it because you guys know that I work with youth overcoming drug abuse, and I work with a lot of adolescents. Herein lies is that marijuana has been known to affect the development of the brain with young adolescents. And so when we know that, and whether it's an opioid that is being abused or marijuana that's being misused or anything like that, there are different moods, there are different responses and actions and coping mechanisms that are attached to using these substances. So when you ask me, and from an adolescent standpoint, is marijuana better right now as opposed to an opioid? I'm going to have to tell you, no, it's not, because we're looking at the long-term growth. I like to look at term this as arrested development. So when you see someone that is 30 that still acts like they're 12 or 15 or so, because they haven't had the necessary development, because they have went to using these substances to help them with mood, and they haven't been able to get beyond those different walls and barriers or so. One thing you want to add to that?
Well, I just say that obviously there are about 33 states that have legalized marijuana in some form or fashion. Uh-huh. We know that is a wave going around our country. What I always keep in mind, though, is our young people. And how whatever we do affects our young people. Yes. and their perception of harm, because their perception of harm becomes their reality in time a lot of times. So that's where I really want to focus on. And so, James, you're absolutely right. We're still dealing with brain development in our young people. We're still dealing with consequences and externalities, what we call externalities, that they may end up losing focus in school and things like that. So we just want to make sure that whatever we do, whatever policies that we use and think about we're helping our young people as well. Now, in terms of the legalization across the states, we will begin to get, if we haven't already, data in terms of how that's impacting our those particular states, and then we can begin to compare those states that do have legalized marijuana versus those who do not. And so those are the kind of things that I'm interested in trying to figure out. Those kind of things from a policy level, from that standpoint.
Great. Right. So as we wrap this up, if you have any questions along this line of thought or topic, have the conversation, or hashtag ask a counselor on your social media platform or program of choice or so. We'll find it. Also, for more on this topic and topics like this, you can visit us at havetheconversationtn.org. Our next live stream will be in 2 weeks on February the 7th at 11 a.m. and it will be with April Barnes of The Next Door. Y'all guys take care. Have a great morning.